I'm sure you're all going to have a great experience. Thanks for making it all the way over here. There's not much history to this talk. I just got extremely jealous at Zach meeting Chris a while ago, so I decided to reach out and invited him over to Google. He came, he brought his friend Ben over, and they're going to tell you more about what they do today.
Just want to say thanks so much for having us. It's such a cool experience to be able to share, what we love to do. And I'll give you a little bit of background on kind of myself and Ben and sort of what, I guess, culminated us being able to be here. We're also really lucky to have a lot of the editorial staff from Surfer Magazine, Brendan Thomas, the editor, as well as Grant Ellis, the photo editor, are going to be joining us today. They're a little stuck in traffic. And we also have Josh Mulcoy, who's featured here. This was the photo that was on the cover of Surfer Magazine. And I would say that for myself, like 10 years of surf travel to some of the coldest places on Earth, this is pretty much the culmination of all those experiences, and what's made it incredibly special and amazing is kind of this moment right here. So my name is Chris Burhard. I'm a senior staff photographer for Surfer Magazine. I've shot for Surfer for about 6 years on staff, and I've been lucky enough to travel for them all around the world. And a big part of like what I bring to the table for them is really planning these larger editorial style like expeditions where it's not just going to Mexico for a swell or like Tahiti or something like that. It's more about getting a group of guys together and trying to go seek out somewhere that's way off the grid, like way off the grid. And so these places, in our kind of endless search for, I guess, perfect waves or the ultimate experience, you could say, has brought us to me and Ben specifically to Iceland and Norway and Kamchatka, Russia, and South New Zealand and Alaska and Aleutians and pretty much everywhere in between. So I think for us, when it comes to kind of planning and executing these experiences, the coolest thing is that Google Earth actually plays a huge role. This place that we went to, the Aleutian Island chain, it's basically one of the most remote places on Earth. It's like this island chain that stretches from Russia to Alaska, and we'll kind of get into that in a second and talk about some of the details planning. But just to kind of give the backstory, it took about 3 years to plan. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, from basically the inception of like clicking on Google Earth and zooming in as far as you can to see like some little whitewashed triangle of wave to like actually being there. It was just this long process. And what we always find the hardest thing is access, because a big part of what we're trying to do is go to places where there's no access. There's 6 people living on this island, all natives, 1 white guy, and basically no cars, no roads, nothing. You're basically on foot or on horseback or on quad riding, trying to find out how to get to these beaches. So access plays a huge part in that. But let me just take you through it. What was really cool is Surfer Magazine did a big, pretty awesome tour with this film. And for us, something that me and Ben really like to do is kind of make it a little more intimate and create an experience that's like a little more behind the scenes. So that's why doing a slideshow has been super fun for us to come and talk about the moments behind the film. And I guess in a way, when you see the film, it'll set you up for how rad of an experience it really is. This photo here, this is basically the view from our lodge. This is, what's the mountain right there?
The mountain's called Vezevidov there on the left.
Yeah, and I think that the little mountain range is Resheshnoi, I think. Mm-hmm. And it was so funny because, like anyone else, when we're researching these places and trying to look into them, like all we would see is just like gray photos. Like sunny day in the Aleutians, it was just like foggy skies, couldn't see anything. We had no idea there was even a volcano here in this place, let alone visible, actually. So it was pretty ironic to like see this thing from our view, like on some of these clear mornings. One of the things that was crazy is when researching, we kept coming across this really ominous moniker, Cradle of Storms. Cradle of Storms. What is the Cradle of Storms, right? And what we realized is that basically storms start here. This is where some of the biggest swells and storms in the world that pound Hawaii and pound California, and they travel all the way down the coast and build this long period, and they just put perfect surf in like Santa Barbara. When they're here, it's like the most horrendous, like crazy thing you've ever seen in your entire life, and you don't want to be in the water at all. But there's these glimpses, these moments where basically the storm is passing or right before it comes, where it just creates this like momentary perfection. And usually that kind of culminates inside some little bay or some little nook where that swell can really wrap inside of and clean up and gather itself and stuff. So that was really cool to experience. So a lot of people probably are familiar with Dutch Harbor. It's became pretty well known because of the what's that show?
Deadliest
Yeah,
Catch.
Deadliest Catch, and some of those other. I think like Alaska, there's like a like an SOS show like about people getting saved in Alaska on helicopters that's based there. So Dutch became really well known because of that, and all the other islands are all very uninhabited, very, very remote. Where we were was right here, basically, in this little island called Umnak Island. And I think at its peak, it had about 60 people. Nowadays, it's like 6 people. And so, like, I think they were a little nervous because we were like a group of 6. So, like, if there was a political vote, we could have like swayed the majority in some way, you know. So, it was definitely there was some blank stares, and we'll get more into that. But what really draws us to, I guess, these regions is this right here, this big Aleutian trench that you see. And that big trench is what really creates these opportunity for massive waves to smash this coastline and create opportunities for incredible surf. But with that also comes some of the most active volcanoes in the world. And actually right where we were staying was Mount Cleveland, which is there, not my photo, stolen from Google Earth, thank you. Is one of the most active volcanoes in the world. And so we'd wake up in the morning, some of these clear days, and we'd look out and we'd see like these clouds kind of looming over this volcano. And we'd go to ask Scott, who is kind of our pseudo guide for a day or two, you know, what's going on? He's like, oh, that thing's erupting all the time. I think it's actually the most active volcano in the world. But if you see this little stretch of land right here, this is actually where our island was. So it was super interesting to wake up and see and just be in an area that's so wild and so active. And because of this, the Ring of Fire, you know, which basically stretches from South America all the way up and through Japan and everywhere, it's one of the places where you get some of the best surf in the world because of how those tectonic plates and how all those big steep drop-offs, you know, submarine canyons create opportunities for swells to really culminate on the coast. Last year, just so everybody knows, Kamchatka is this big peninsula right here in Russia. So 2 years ago in 2012, me and Ben did a trip there where we flew to Kamchatka and basically drove around in like a 6-wheeled military vehicle and explored for surf there. So we know the region well, this volcanic soil. It's like amazing for building sandbars and creating opportunities for really good waves. And I think that we've always been drawn to these areas for some reason. I don't know why exactly, but we love it. And I think that, you know, this little elbow up here, for some reason, just that little elbow where those two plates meet, that's just where all the activity really happens. So I'm going to turn it over to Ben, who's actually going to speak a little bit about Google Earth and how much of a role that's really played for us and the planning. And
so Google Earth is kind of one of the big tools that we use when we're planning the whole trip ahead of time. And it just provides a lot of inspiration because I know we spend hours just zooming in on all these areas thinking like, man, what's there? Like, you know, it kind of makes your imagination just run wild when you're like, man, I wonder what it'd be like to actually walk along those beaches and check it out. So basically there you can see the Aleutian Arc and some of the pinpoints that we've put down for, you know, places that we've spotted and could have potential waves. So
we don't know if when we're researching, if it's just like a pile of reef that's sticking like 80 feet above the water, or if it's like a perfect wave.
Yeah.
But we're kind of trying to use our experience from other trips we've gone on and places that we've photographed and stuff we've seen from the air to kind of culminate that.
Yeah, and so here's a zoomed in view of the island we're on, and you can see kind of the volcanic activity. You got the 2 volcanoes there on the left and then a huge crater on the right, and that kind of makes up the island. And then where we were staying is where all those pins are located. And so that's all just possible locations that we mapped out beforehand, kind of thinking that's potential areas that we want to go to. And like Chris said, one of the biggest challenges is just being able to get down to the coast. And on an island that has no roads, you're just trying to figure out like how realistic is it to actually be able to get down to the beach. And one thing that was really great about this island is that you have the Bering Sea on the north and the North Pacific on the south, separated by 3 miles. So you have a lot of options to be checking out weather systems that are coming in from both directions. And you can see there Nikolsky and then the route that we drove down every day to the beach to check the surf. So that's about
basically here
3.5 miles.
I think it was farther. I think it was quite a bit farther than that.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's like it's one thing to be kind of looking at this on a map, but then once you get there, you realize how tough it is to actually be able to access these places. And here's an example. On the way back, we stopped in Dutch Harbor, and one of the pilots was flying a mail route, and he invited us to come along and check out some of the islands that he was flying over. And so he actually flew us around this island, both sides of it, and we got to check out some of the breaks, and just realize, you know, when you see the breaks from the air and see like the cliffs and the ocean just surging up against it, you realize it's one thing to see on a map, but it's a completely different thing to actually experience it. And
Good question.
On the map,
the
so
left.
like
So-
good left, good right.
that'd be like a left breaking wave or a right breaking
Yeah.
wave.
Yeah.
So like when you catch a wave, you'd be either surfing to the left or to the right, and so that
Like we
kinda-
might see a cove and it might have like a line of whitewash coming in on one side, and we'd be like, okay, that's a right-handed wave, right? So it's good for us to know, like a lot of times we're planning like what type of waves we're gonna be looking at, you know, and it also really affects like who we bring with us, you know, like if it looks like it's all beach breaks and super mellow, then we might pick a crew that is a little more versed in that. But if it's all like waves that break a mile and a half out to sea and they're like monstrous Maverick style waves, then we might pick little different people.
Yeah. So.
But one thing I love is this right here. Like you can see all these different potential spots, and this entire island has surf all across it. But the only places that we ended up really surfing the entire time was here, here, and here, and here. These 4 spots. Never made it to this cove. Never saw good waves over here. It was like 80 feet and like Victory at Sea, the scariest thing I've ever seen. All these waves were just too windy. It's incredible how little we got to experience, because we barely scraped the surface. And that's one of the things that keeps us going, you know, keeps us ticking and keeps us excited.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and kind of just the exciting thing for being able to know what's out there. You know, I've been to a lot of places on the earth that are just probably 1,000 years too early in terms of like being well groomed for waves, like Iceland, for example. It's so raw, and the Aleutians, I feel like all the setups, all the reefs, everything is like perfectly established for good waves, which is really interesting. So, trying to move forward here because I know we don't have tons of time, but picking a crew is super crucial to me and to Ben when we're going on these trips. And one of the things that we always do is, we'll talk about in the film too, and it kind of sounds a little serious and ominous, but in reality, when you're driving, you know, on a quad every day, you know, 20, 30 miles, checking different spots, you know, and you're at a beach and on a location where there's no medic, there's nothing, there's barely anybody that speaks English, you know, and it's like, nor anyone that wants to speak to you, but you really have to be, you put your trust in these people's hands. So you're not just picking folks that, you know, are like kind of young, you know, kids who you think are gonna be great and you're gonna get great photos of. It's more about you're picking people who you trust and who are your friends, and who you know if you know stuff hit the fan, that you could trust them and that they could, you know, get your back. So one of the people we brought was Alex Gray, and he's a total lunatic, amazing person. I'm glad he's not here because we can poke fun at him, but he definitely is like the hero of this you know film, just because of the waves that he surfed. But he can surf anything from 2 foot to 50 foot, and the guy was, you know, first in, last out, really awesome person to have on board, and just a total character. So, and then Josh Mulcoy, who we're able to have here today. I've been able to travel with him for years. He actually has probably spent more time in cold regions than anyone else on the entire planet. Was like the first person to surf in Alaska. Got the keys to the city in Yakutat for opening up surfing to the entire state. So it's always cool to travel with Josh because of that knowledge and that experience that he brings to the table. You know, he definitely knows how to stay out in the cold and last, and like he always picks the right wave, as you can see from the cover photo that he got, and he knows how to wait it out. This was this little like defunct cabin we stayed at for a day while we waited out surf on another part of the island. Pete DeVries, this guy is incredible too. He probably spends more time in a wetsuit than anyone else that I know. He lives in Tofino, British Columbia, and in Canada, and he basically is like one of the best surfers who is born and bred in cold water ever. And the guy loves, not afraid of going fast, that's for sure. So when you arrive in these islands, you know pretty immediately that you're somewhere distant. You know, you're somewhere different. We actually heard this great piece of advice right when we got there. They said, there is an absolutely gorgeous woman behind every tree on this island. And we never saw a single tree the entire time we were there. So it was interesting to be somewhere that was like a proper tundra. Like, it's not just like, you know, there's some trees and it's like tundra. This landscape is meant to handle and work with just the harshest conditions you can throw at it.
Because you just have like wind blowing horizontally at like 90 miles an hour.
Yeah, rain does not come this way. It comes
so
like this.
Anything that sticks up from the ground is going to be flattened pretty soon.
Including houses and everything else. So when this plane landed, and we're unloading our surfboards, and they're unloading, reindeer sheds and boxes of meat that hunters have come back and from the island with their kill. It was definitely a unique experience. They're looking at us, we're looking at them. We didn't really know what was happening, and pretty much they just told us, just take your surfboards out, throw them down the middle of the plane, which. If anybody's ever traveled with surfboards, it's like the last thing you want to do. It's like fiberglass, they're sensitive. We're just like shoving them in the middle and the whole plane's vibrating and fiberglass is like flexing and we're like, this is super great for, fire hazard if we need to exit the plane. But we got there in one piece. You don't take a flight here on the regular basis. This is a chartered special flight that they just do every once in a while, and it's totally weather dependent. So you have no idea whether you're going to stay and you're going to be able to leave the day that you want, or you're going to be stuck there for 2 weeks, which totally happens. In fact, while we were there, they had one run that they flew all the way from Dutch over to this island and just couldn't land because the winds were too strong. So, but as soon as we got in the air, we realized how, I was actually scared at first. I was like, man, this is gonna be like a barren wasteland. Like, this is gonna be scary. But as soon as we got in the air, we realized how beautiful these islands were. It was incredible to see the water table in such like a amazing, one shot, just seeing it from the snow all the way to these, waterfalls pouring into the ocean. And we realized really quickly, that same idea of like, wow, this is going to be challenging, the access and what we're going to be able to, how we're going to be able to get to these spots. Because we flew in on a day when there was amazing waves. It was actually pumping, like surf was just pounding the coastline. It was a beautiful day. The sun was coming out, and we knew immediately. We were like, wow, like how are we going to get there? How are we going to get from here to there? Are we going to are we going to be able to get there on quads, or you have to hike or whatever? So that was, that's always kind of our constant battle, I feel like. And we realized really quickly that was going to be a huge one here. And as we're flying in, we're passing volcanoes, we're passing these amazing bays. So just for reference too, over here is right where we were staying, and we would ride our quads to here. And then this is the bay that we surfed in. And we never even got to surf in this bay or this bay. And it's kind of, I look at this photo and it's like, it hurts a little bit because as we flew in, right over this mountaintop or ridge line was this perfect left wave just peeling down this point break, like as good as it gets anywhere in the world. And we saw that thing and our jaws dropped, and we saw another reef over here and another wave, and we were just like, how do we get there? And we never even got to go there. So it's just like the untapped potential is so amazing. And I think that, I think that's what inspires us to go to these cold places, because there's no Starbucks coffees on the beach or parking meters. So the Aleuts, the natives are amazing. They have such a great sense of humor. This plane, basically they pulled this plane right up to where the landing strip is, because it had basically crashed down the way or at the end of the landing strip, and they just thought it'd be funny to bring it up. So it's like the first thing you see. Another, ominous moniker for us as we're already going into this. And now they just use it for bullet practice or fire practice.
Well, it's crazy, like that culture, I guess, has been on that island for over 8,000 years.
Yeah.
So it was just crazy to see that tradition. Like, when they go out and hunt, it's like they'll shoot a seal or something and bring it back for all the elders, and like divide it up with all the people in the town.
Yeah, I mean, they would tell stories about when they would like cross the ice bridge as kids and stuff like that. No, just kidding. Go ahead.
Are they Inuit people?
What's that?
They're Inuit?
They are Inuit, or they Aleut. Yeah.
So it's
I guess
related,
it's like a difference. Yeah. It was pretty interesting though. It was definitely like they were closed off, and then they got kind of excited on what we were doing, and they invited us over for some festivities, and it got pretty fun. So one thing, you realize we landed, and we saw the beauty of this place, and my first impression was like, man, this is like, we're seeing all these homes, right? And we're not seeing any people, and it's just like satellite dishes and like homes and all these like barricades for weather, and it looked like somewhere that you get sent to have like alien testing done on yourself or something like that, like just kind of like something out of a sci-fi novel. And we just realized everything was ravaged by wind. Storms moved so fast through this region that in the film, when you watch it, you'll see there'd be sunny days where it's offshore and beautiful, and we had t-shirts on, and then literally 15 minutes later it'd be hailing. And some of those sessions that looked like totally different days were within the same half hour. And so the storms, they would just move through, and they would be so ferocious and fast and quick that it was really an exercise in kind of like being prepared and living simply and understanding that everything you need is going to be on this quad with you for the day, everything. And it was because, I mean, you're going to be a ways out there, and we would get flat tires, we'd get stuck, we would fly over the handlebars or almost get, who knows what would happen. So this is the town. Like I said, it was built to have for 60 folks, I think, at their peak, and now it's 6. So you have, nice options of like some geometric domes or like a Russian Orthodox church or I don't even know, some like barricaded fish homes. That's basically your options for living there. But it was amazing, how they made it work, and it was beautiful. And I think that almost more importantly than the weather, it was really beautiful to see how the animals interacted with this landscape. They completely own the place, like without a doubt, not afraid of us at all. Most of the animals were brought there, horses, cows, and buffalo, reindeer for military, because in World War II, this was a big military outpost on the other side of the island, right? So they brought all these cows to feed the troops. Troops left, the cows didn't. The cows were completely feral, and they basically own the place. Like I'm not even joking. It's not like just, like happy cows from California. These are like scary, like huge, massive cows. Like we're taking a big wide berth around them because we don't want to get anywhere near them, because the one thing they told us is like, if anything's going to charge you, it's going to be the cows. And they would look at us and just like vibe us out. Like they didn't care that we were there. And we're used to like going to places that are like, as surfers, you go to places where there's local breaks and you kind of are respectful, but this was like the animals' local break. Like they didn't want to see us. They didn't care that we were there. They just completely were so over us, to the point where it was like, we knew that they were like, just get out of here, like just beat it, and every time we'd go outside, we would see another element of that. It was really funny to witness, actually. But like I said, the reindeer, the way that like the animals interact with the landscape is beautiful. These are sheds that were pulled off the road. They weren't all kills. There's actually tons of them that just die everywhere, so you pull them off so you don't run over them with your quad and impale yourself, which can be a bummer. So there's, like you'd see just cow skulls you'd be driving, or like something that would, like I think at one point we saw like an animal that was like off the trail, had just died, and then like a day later it was like just bones. Like just the weather and the animals had just come and just taken everything. It was really interesting to see that like circle of life becoming really, really small. So birds are a big reason people go there as well. The bird life is absolutely beautiful. I've never gotten that close to an eagle and felt like it was gonna attack me at chest height. But they're amazing all over the island. And one of the coolest things that I saw, I included this photo just because I loved it. We were checking out, you can't really see because of how bright the screen is, but there's this really good right-hander we surfed, and then in the foreground there's just this fox just mowing on seaweed. And I don't think he's a vegetarian by choice, but it was just really interesting to see like their habits they've gained from being in this climate, So this is Alex holding up one of the sheds for scale. These things were massive. I think that they would say like, I guess 42-point sheds they would have, and just crazy antlers. So Alex isn't here, so we can pick on him, which is great, because I think you'll get an idea for how much of a freak he is in the movie. But as time went on, he definitely embraced the culture and the landscape the most. I think it took its toll on him a little bit, to the point where like, by the end of the trip, it was like, I think we all look like extras from like a Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome film or something, just like totally feral, like blending in with the landscape. Like, I mean, we forgot to mention, but like the first day we got there, all of our food was missing.
Oh yeah. So we had to bring all of our own food to the island. And so the day before we left out of Anchorage, Chris and I had to load up like 4 shopping carts full of food, and we were just trying to jam to get it to the hangar.
Going shopping for like 6 guys on like a high protein diet for like 2 weeks. It was super fun.
And then when we got to Dutch Harbor on the plane, Chris is like, oh my gosh, like I feel like the plane should be fuller, like it's a small space already. And it seems like we have more space than I expected. And it turns out they forgot to load half the food on our plane. Yeah. So we land there with like
noodles and like ketchup and like all the things that you don't want to eat for 2 weeks. So they gave us seal and reindeer, and we ate that for the first couple of days. And I mean, I'm all for trying anything, but that stuff gets old fast. I mean, it's not like good game meat that gets mixed in with some yummy fats here. It's like just straight reindeer. Like it was really
reindeer tacos.
Yeah, it was really intense, but it was amazing. It was cool to have that instant kind of infiltration into the culture. So we realized pretty quickly that quad travel was probably our favorite way to explore. It was amazing to see this landscape on 4 wheels like this. And it was really such a cool experience to be able to, like I said before, pare everything down to just what you need. And you can see, like, we've got our axe, we've got our rope, we've got our, our pump, and at first I think we were kind of like just excited, like, oh man, we're gonna be manly men, we're gonna go out there, we're gonna have everything we need, and like look really cool, and we're gonna film all of it. And then all of a sudden, like, we realized we needed every single thing we brought, and then some. Like, everything came into play. And you can see how sunny it is and how clean our clothes are, and this is like the first afternoon. But, this is our commute. Basically, there's the town. There's the town. That's Mount Cleveland right there. You can kind of see it. I don't know if you can, you probably actually can't see it on this screen, but you can on mine, but it's like this right here. It's kind of blown out. Anyway, that was the commute through this amazing, like, grassland, wetland area. And so this is Scott. Any person who's living on an island with 6 natives who's a white dude is definitely running from something, so I don't put it past him, but he's amazing human, but I'm sure he's got some kind of a sketchy past, but he was amazing. He guided us for the first couple of days, and one of the craziest experiences was, like, we got to the end of this beach, right, and it was just this, they cliffed out, and we were like, oh man, we see a wave way over there, and he's like, no sweat, guys, let's just follow me, I'll guide you through the tide pools. And so we actually took the quads into the tide pools, and I'm not talking about like tide pools like fun, like there's drop-offs of like 15 feet on both sides, and we're driving on this like little tiny canyon under, like, with our wheels like 1.5 feet underwater. And he's like, go right at this rock and go left here, and we're like trying to remember it, and like his dog's just jumping around, and it was like the sketchiest thing I think we've ever done. And he's like, by the way, just don't do it at high tide or low tide, because then you'll get caught. We're like, great, okay. So it was touch and go, but Scott was amazing. One of his claims to fame was like, what was it, like, he hadn't eaten meat in
in like 20 years. Store-bought meat in 20 years, because he just kills everything himself on the island.
Yeah, anything apparently. So yeah, this is kind of morning commute. I love this photo. You couldn't have even posed it if you tried, because these are whale vertebrae, and they're just washed up on the shore, and they're like so incredibly heavy. But it was just amazing. Like I said, once again, that circle of life, coming back to that, being able to see that right in front of your eyes, like as it's occurring. Front row parking. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can see the volcano, but that's Vezovidov, and then that's Resheshnoi right there. So this was kind of the daily commute, the surf check. We'd come up on these tall bluffs, and we'd see over the top of these hills and be able to check out the waves. We'd be able to see from here. This is actually the right-hander that Josh got the cover on, the slide I showed in the beginning, and then over here we could look over and see this left, and then we could see another wave. So we'd have this big expansive view, be able to just pull up on top like king of the mountain kind of thing, and it was such an incredible way to explore. But the rain did set in. So we keep talking about how beautiful it was, and we have to remember this is the Cradle of Storms. So it is definitely weather. My absolute favorite part in this film, which I'm so stoked for you guys to see. There's a scene, I want you to remember it. It's when we're sitting inside the cabin, you can just see the windows vibrating, right? They're like, and you don't even, it's almost like, it looks like a horror film type of thing, where like you don't even know what's happening. But literally we're sitting inside this like warm cabin, and the windows are like, they're vibrating like 12 inches back and forth. Like, it was crazy. You don't even want to get next to them. And you're hearing this noise from them, and they're like double pane glass windows that are meant to basically take 80 to 100 mile-an-hour winds. Like, it's unreal. And so we sat through the storm, and it was one of the coolest things that we saw. But definitely this track, it changed from being this epic, flat, dry track to this muddy, just, getting stuck every 10 feet track that was kind of brutal. This is Ben. He kind of got the worst of it on a couple of goes. I think one time we did this like half-day trip to go explore these highlands, and then all of a sudden, like, we're like, okay, cool, we're all taking off later, and like I look back, and like Ben's not there, and I'm like, oh, I wonder. No, you had to go get your backpack, right?
Yeah.
And then
I left my backpack like 2 miles off the trail.
Yeah, it like fell off the quad from bouncing. So that's something that would happen always. Like, stuff would fly out, and then your quad didn't start, and you got kind of stuck.
Yeah. So these guys just left me because they just like took off, and then I'm here like trying to start my quad, and there's like nothing's happening, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, well, I'm gonna have to hike 5 miles in, and then there's a hailstorm coming, and finally it started up. So
this is interesting though, because you'd ride across these tracks, and it would just be, one day it'd be super mellow, no big deal, and all of a sudden it would rain, all this water would collect, and it'd form like a small river, and you'd be riding along, looking over your friends, smiling, and then just Indo and like almost fly off the front of the thing, and it was kind of and you'd have to like be on your toes constantly.
Yeah.
And this is Ben just getting completely worked. So this is Pete. Another time we got really, really stuck. Not just partially stuck. I mean, we're talking like you're going headfirst into this like little pile of mud. So we thought it'd be smart, you know, given that Alex has the biggest quad, we'd hook up the quads, and Alex would basically pull him out. And so that's what we did. Alex jumped on, grabbed it up, started to go. It started to pull him out. And I think he looked back and like stood up, and then all of a sudden his quad started to tip back. And all I remember seeing is like Alex scrambling, jumping off the quad, surfboards are like crunched on the ground, fiberglass is just flexing, and all I imagined was like him getting impaled by his fins or something like that, and then just like the trip being over. But luckily that didn't happen. I love this photo too. I always look back at the images and think of the subtleties, because this one's great. He's got his full wetsuit on and he didn't surf. And that just shows how bad the conditions were, that we were like, at first we were like, great, we're gonna go down to the beach, suit up, it's gonna be rad. All of a sudden, after like 4 days of weather, we were just like suiting up at the cabin, like warm, suiting up in full wetsuit, because we never know what was gonna happen. Another thing that we had this delusions of grandeur, like first day we were like, oh, these little bridges are so cool, let's film them, these are rad, like us going over these little rivers. And all of a sudden it would rain and these things were mossy, and so you'd start to drive over and your whole entire quad would just start to slide off sideways. So you'd have to hit them going faster so you could kind of plan your escape, and we would just slip off, and you could see the thing flexing. It has like 85 boards on it. And this is one of the things that I think made it hard to access the other spots, right? Was
the
like,
rivers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like bays all over that we wanted to get to, but there's just rushing water, and we would have had to build our own bridge to get there. So we
kind of like brought the stuff, but we were just like, we'd spend like 8 hours trying to build a bridge to a wave that might not exist, you know? And that was definitely tough when you knew there was such good surf right there. So this is kind of the aftermath, you know, if you can remember back to that sunny, bright photo and he's like smiling and all happy, and this is like 30 hours on a quad. Like your arms at the end of the night, we'd be like this. We just couldn't even move, because you'd have so much vibration going through you that you'd just be so famished. But you know, mud head to toe, amazing new Aleutian wax job right here. It was intense, to say the least. So we definitely realized, you know, exploring this island by quad though was amazing. The landscape, the way it changed, I've never seen anything quite like it. Actually, you'd come across these bays where there'd be just sand dunes and these sand sculptures out of nowhere, and then cliffs that would drop off for hundreds of feet, and then you come into like a little, you know, kind of almost like a volcanic valley, silt valley, where it'd be like black sand, and they had told us stories of places where there'd be like beaches that would have thermal activity under the beach, and you could dig away the sand and create your own hot tub. We never got to that spot, so next time. But in terms of the waves, the quads this was what really made it amazing. Being able to show up to these spots and just see this incredible, perfect setups that would just reel across, you know, these reefs. As a photographer, being able to like zip around from spot to spot and be able to kind of cruise over and explore these different waves, and you know, just get from like 1 mile to the beach to the other, it was incredible. This is probably one of my favorite shots from the trip too, and being able to, this is Josh about to paddle out. I think this is Alex getting like the first wave of the sunrise. We woke up super early this day because we knew it was gonna be clear, and we were so excited to catch a glimpse at like clear skies in the Aleutians, and it was frosty on the ground, and there's birds flying around. And I don't know if you remember on that cover photo, some of the feedback that Grant gave me actually was like, yeah, people keep asking me if we like Photoshopped this bird in there, because it was like so perfectly poised, you know, in the shot. And you look back through some of the photos and you just see like these little birds flying around everywhere in this like landscape that just would, I think, trump anything else that's going on. And to us, I think that's what makes these places so exciting and amazing. So this is the same day too, just like I said, same session. It had hailed, it had rained, the waves were still perfect, and it just kind of kept going forward. So we're wrapping it up here, but I couldn't leave without talking about the surf a little bit. The waves there were incredible. I've never seen, I think, anything like it in terms of potential. This was the first day, this little right-hander that we surfed. And actually this session, we got here.
This was the first day.
This is the first day.
Yeah, we had no idea this was gonna happen, and we kind of thought the first day this was gonna be as good as it gets. You know, it was like right before sunset.
Guys were like cracking like celebratory beers, and like we were like high-fiving and like being like, we can go home, we did it. Like people are gonna be so excited, because when you travel this far, and sometimes if you just get mediocre surf, let alone great surf, you're excited. I mean, at least for us, we're like, there's a story, there's something. So to get this wave that was like an overhead barreling slab that would be notable anywhere in the world was amazing. And in the middle of the Aleutian Islands. Was incredible. Me and Josh actually on the flight over were like, man, so many trips, the first day's the best, let's not blow it. So we like literally just, as soon as we landed, we were like on quads, like didn't even unpack, just went to the beach and we lucked out, got this session. The second day, we showed up and we saw this left a little bit down the beach and we were like, oh wow, look at this setup, this is perfect. It was like ruler edge, which means when the wave breaks like along a stretch of reef that's so perfect, it's like it was drawn in with a ruler, there's not a droplet of water out of place. And we were thinking, this could be like a really rippable wave. And all of a sudden, as time went on, the next day, swell picked up, the winds picked up, it just became this perfect barreling machine, like something out of Indonesia, like some reef that I've never seen anything quite like it. And this is one of my favorite moments. We never even surfed this wave. It was just another unnamed kind of peak in the background, but you can just see our setup here, quads parked right in front, these big headlands. And I mean, in terms of, I think, what we're searching for, it doesn't get any more perfect than that. I love this clip. I had to include it in there because Alex actually holding a GoPro in his mouth. And I always kind of identify like, oh man, the waves are really good if you're like filming GoPro barrels from the water. And I never would have thought that if somebody said, yeah, you're gonna go to Alaska and get like perfect draining tubes and get these like water clips with like, coming out of the wave. It was crazy. So I love this one because he's puts it in his mouth and just gets completely tubed and comes out and the wave's like kind of perfect. But this wave is probably the most special to me. This photo actually, I think, like resonates the whole experience. I love, you couldn't fake this moment or pose it if you ever tried to. This is Pete walking out through the seaweed on the rocks, bowling ball sized rocks are bigger, and as he's walking out, he takes time to look over and see Alex getting the first wave of the set and just like, going off the top, shredding this wave. And there's Josh paddling right back out to another set. And there's an empty wave just like peeling off in the distance. And not to mention, a volcano here, which I don't know if you guys can see it's too bad because this photo is like really beautiful with the sky and this mountain range. It's everything we search for. It's everything that we give up everything to go for and drain our bank accounts and everything. So, and so that kind of led to this session, which was so special to me, being able to travel this far and get a moment like this, and capture it. In a way, it was like almost like hard to shoot because you're so, enraptured by the beauty of what's around you. And a lot of people have asked, like, oh, is this 3 different photos composited? But it's actually not. So, so kind of the icing on the cake, what was this wave about?
Yeah, so this is, I think halfway through the trip, we were all pretty much sick of the weather and ready to head out. And, we're like, man, should we just kind of scrap it and try to get a flight back? And then we all decided, like, we'll just stay a little bit longer. And the very next day, we came into this other bay that we hadn't even really looked at. And out like 600 yards out to sea, there's just like this boiling wave that was kind of just churning on a reef out there. And the guys saw it and just started flipping out and wanted to give it a shot. And I mean, it was just like the scariest wave that I'd ever seen.
Yeah, it's cool because there's that element of bringing people you trust, and it was kind of tough because we all want to surf this way. We all want to go out there, and I want to shoot it, and Alex wants to surf it, and the guys want to go out. But you also have to weigh out those danger versus everything else, and it's tough because Alex put his wetsuit on and paddled out there like 2 other days and went out there and didn't surf. It was basically, this is a cool photo because it shows how it was about a half mile out to sea. You'd walk over this shallow like seaweed covered reef, then you'd have to basically paddle over like really shallow reef for another quarter mile, and then it'd get to basically a sidewalk of reef. Like you can see the reflection pool here and just how flat that is. It's basically like a big, massive Aleutian swell that's pounding into a sidewalk of reef and just unloading flat. So if you're anywhere in this zone, this is not where you want to be. But when we go out there and we take those risks, it's kind of everybody's decision. And so it was definitely one of those moments where it was like, if he gets hurt, everybody's trip's over. The last thing we want to do is have to like swim out there and pull him out of an orca's mouth or like go out there and drag his body in off the reef, because we're like 2 days from a proper hospital, like for real, like even if the chopper can land or if a plane can land, no medic, nothing. So there's an element to like making that group decision that I think is, important here. And it was awesome to see this all unfold and to see it be so good. And this wave was incredible. We were up on these cliffs that were like 200, 300 feet high, so we could get a perspective over because the whitewash was so big on the inside. And it was perfect. I mean, in terms of good waves, this is as good as it gets. And Alex kind of mentioned, I think he's like, this is as good as backdoor. which is basically the other side of Pipeline, Hawaii, or like, you know, some other waves in Australia he surfed. And it was so cool to see all three of these guys trade off barrels just back to back in some of the harshest, most remote areas on the planet. So this was like one of the last days of the trip, and for us to get this experience was amazing. There was actually a period there where Alex surfed by himself for like 45 minutes, and I don't think he fell once. But then when he did fall, he fell pretty bad. So everybody gets a beating once. You know, it just happens. I think Pete had a broken board, had to swim in. Alex got pretty worked, and yeah, but it was worth it. So yeah, I think in summation, you know, I think with more than anything, me and Ben, we know like right off the bat that all we're really doing is going out there and going to these places and having fun. You know, we're not curing the sick or giving water to people who need it. If anything, I think what our goal always is just to basically inspire folks to want to get out there and to seek more and to have a cultivate appreciation for these wild places, because I think that's what we've done, and that's what we've tried to do is go to places that hopefully we can share with folks and bring back these stories and experiences and films to inspire them. So the next time they're booking that flight or they're going somewhere, they're making that vacation, to go a little farther, a little more off the grid, and, you know, have an experience that, you know, is lasting and just, you know, push that scope. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, but we're going to start the film right now. But just to introduce the film, Ben was the guy that really is the cinematographer behind this entire project. He is the guy who made this thing happen, and I was lucky enough to help direct and DP this project. And the guys at Surfer Magazine made this thing what it was, and the filming and the editing and the music. And Bryce, who's not able to be here, was the editor on this project and did an amazing job. And I'll talk about it after.
How do you guys protect your gear when you travel, like the cameras?
That's
everything else?
That's an interesting one, actually. That's such a unique thing to kind of everywhere you go. Like if you go to Iceland, for example, all the sand on the beach is like volcanic soil, so it's like microscopic. And when the winds blow there, which they do inevitably, it goes places you never even imagined. So like I've had like lenses get completely destroyed. So it's just. So much of it's just kind of being prepared. I think here it was like all about having dry bags and kind of being prepared to get wet preemptively, so that when it did, and I usually just have like lens cloths all over me, and I'll have like some Ziploc bags and rubber bands just for like those last minute moments, you know, like in your back pocket. That always helps. And then just having a good kit for when you're back at the cabin, like to clean everything out. There's one thing that's kind of invaluable to me, and it's like there's this product. It's called a Beastie bag, and it's like a aluminum looking like bag that has a bunch of like silica packets in it that you can put a big electronics in, and you basically, like in the past when I've gotten equipment wet, phones, whatever, you know, you put it in like rice or something like that, but that's really not that great. So this thing, you like put it in there and you put it in like somewhere warm, and it just absorbs all the moisture. And they're really good. I bring like 3 of them, and they're great because at some point something will get soaked no matter what. So that's kind of good.
I agree.
Do you have any other tactics, just like like blowing on stuff?
No, I mean, I built like a little plastic case for my camera so that, you know, because it's like you never know if it's going to rain or hail or what's going to happen, so you just kind of have to be prepared for it. But
yeah.
What's the next destination you plan?
Ben and I are actually going to go to the Faroe Islands in October, which is this really small island, like super micro in between Iceland and Scotland, and it's just has a really unique history, and like it's like one of the only islands in the world they still like whale like really frequently, and the culture's like the closest to basically like
Norway and Iceland.
Norway, like because like Iceland is like the second closest, but they're actually the purest bloodline, so it's like really unique, really hard to access place, but just some really cool potential and like a lot of awesome like birds and all that kind of cool stuff. I think for us, we're always looking for places that are more like visually beautiful as well, so that there's that, you know, people see it and they engage with it, you know, because, I mean, by no means are these the best waves on the planet at all, you know, but we go there for the experience, just as important or maybe more importantly, you know, and I think it's that satisfaction from like looking at something on Google Earth, this little white triangle or white speck of whatever, and then going there and seeing it actually, you know, be real is so important to us, so. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, first, thank you for sharing this with us. That was
Yeah, thanks for sitting through it all. I'm sorry, it was long-winded.
I feel like I went on a vacation with you.
And the froze, yeah, the whole time.
So my question is, how do you actually manage access to the land that you had to travel over?
Yeah, so we signed a permit while we were there because the people that live there, they own that entire island. And so it was like just when we landed, we had to fill out a permit and pay for that, for the land use. So you have like a certain period of time that you can be there for.
Yeah, logistics is just everything, and that's kind of what, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, like 3 years to go somewhere. Well, you only have 2 months out of every year that you would want to be there. So we're always trying to make it work within this 2-month window. And then basically like it just didn't work one time, didn't work the next time. We just running into access issues and things like that. And we finally kind of made a breakthrough and met a person who was like, yeah, I am a liaison for the tribe and people who want to come visit the island for hunters normally, but he's like, yeah, I can set you guys up. And so that was kind of our key to get in there and make it happen. And it was cool. They were really grateful, happy to have us, you know, and we always try to be super low footprint, which is like really important, you know, too. So besides driving quads all over their native land, you know, so yeah, go ahead.
So how cold was the water on average, and what kind of suits are we talking? Like how thick of suits you use?
Water hovered, what do you think?
Like low 40s, like 41, 42.
Yeah, I think there was some days, it all really depends on the wind too. Like the water could be a certain degree, but if you're like, if it's like howling like 30, 40 knots too, it can like plummet the temps outside a lot, so it feels a lot colder. I feel like some days it would feel like below like high 30s, you know, almost like, but it depends on if the sun was out or if the sun would get covered. But
yeah, and it snowed while we were there.
Yeah, and like some mornings when it was icy, that was kind of brutal. 5 mil wetsuits, but more importantly than the suit is your gloves and your booties, 7 mil, because like the blood leaves your extremities first, and that's really what kind of gets you really cold is when your hands and your feet get cold. So you're coming in, you feel like you're walking on like wooden pegs, you know, and you just have no sensation. It's kind of brutal. So getting warm before you go in the water, I think, is the most important thing. We realized that pretty fast. Go ahead.
Have you ever, or would you consider submitting your film to the Banff Mountain Film Festival?
We heard about it.
Yeah, we think we missed this year's entry, but we've submitted. We made another film actually. We brought it here. This film to Russia. We made a film that trip too, and we submitted that to a lot of mountain film festivals. And it's always cool. Actually, I think me and Ben, we really like those mountain towns, those communities. I think we like resonate with them because we love cold places. And so we actually showed this film in Boulder and in Denver, and like 2 sold out places there, and they loved it, you know, which was so cool to see. Like they like didn't quite know like when to clap when like guys are coming out of waves, but like they still got the overall psych. So it was really cool to go there and to share it with them. But I've done some work with Banff Mountain Film Fest and stuff, and had a photo submission from like these trips entered. And it's really, they're great people over there. So
yeah, last year was the winner was actually a surfing movie.
It was called North of the Sun. It's this amazing film about these guys who went to Norway, this like remote beach you have to hike into, and like lived there for like 6 months and ate like, I don't even know what they ate, but they like, it was like terrible. It was gnarly. They like built a shelter, and it was really cool. It was a really inspiring film. I'd recommend to check it out if you like films about people suffering. Do you have a question?
Yeah. Who handles the logistics for these kind of trips that you guys do?
Me and this guy do.
Yeah.
It's usually like emails and texts, and then like we have a couple, like as we get closer, we have a couple powwows.
Yeah.
For Russia, actually, it was funny because we had this footage, like for the Russia film we made, we had this footage from before the trip where like Ben was over the house, and I'm like talking to Lena, who is like our handler there, and she's like talking to us about bears and like bear traps and how we're gonna like get around and like how we're gonna be protected. And it's like it's always like this same kind of, you're like talking to somebody and it's like the connection's really bad. And you're getting like bits of information, and you never really know until you get there. You know, it was like there was definitely some like shockers.
You never really know and who's going to be there on the other end when you show up. So.
You're like hoping that like you arrive and the guys like at the airport.
And on this trip, you know, when we landed, everybody there was so nice, but then we heard like the next island over, I guess the people that live there are like pretty like hostile to outsiders. And you know, we had no idea, like we could have landed on that island with like 10 hostile people that like don't want us there. You know, it's like, we're just fortunate, I guess.
That island's lame anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah, how much direction do you do for the athletes? Like how much of it is like, you know, they go out and do their thing, you take pictures. How much is it that you like have ideas for the shots that you
think
want?
it's kind of mixture. It's like, it's cool because usually we feel like align ourselves with athletes or guys who like, they know what we're looking for. It's like, we're gonna go surf this wave with this volcano in the background. Like, we all get it. Like, this thing's beautiful. Let's do this. But at the same time, when they're in the water, they're just doing their thing. Like, these guys are so good at what they do. Like, we couldn't even direct them if we tried. Sometimes if we're shooting in the water, which this trip didn't really allow because I think the landscapes were so much better. But typically when we're shooting in the water, we'll be working really closely. Like, we'll be like trying to get one particular shot or line up in one area. But with this, like, any of the direction that really came was more like, let's do a couple passes with the quad here. Let's do this. Or let's set up this shot. Or, it was all periphery around like the actual surfing. I think for us, we're just trying to kind of tell the story around that. And sometimes that'll take a couple goes. But the surfing element of it, it's just like, whenever there's waves, we're on it because you can go to these places and surf like twice, maybe. So we were lucky. That was like, I think 5 sessions, 6. What, Josh? Like, how many sessions was the whole thing?
Yeah, it was probably like 6.
Yeah, like 6 times. And I think like
Out of 2 weeks.
Yeah, out of 2 weeks, like long days, like, so it's kind of brutal.
How did you guys start working together?
Ben was stalking me, and I just, I was working for Surfer Magazine, and Ben was living with one of the art directors there, or
Yeah.
yeah, and he like had reached out to me. Ben runs this really awesome, like, super funny blog called Arctic Surf, and it was just all about like Arctic surfing, like most places that you'd never even be able to go to, and just kind of like more scientific perspective of it. And so I had seen it, and he reached out to me, and we kind of had this similar interest, and got breakfast and became best friends ever since. No, but we had similar passions, wanted to explore different places, and I think our first trip was New Zealand, the South Island, New Zealand in the winter, which was really cool to go there. So,
Yeah.
did you see it any other different way?
No, it's totally accurate.
When you guys find a new wave, how long do you kind of scope it out, or is it like first set comes in and everybody's suiting up?
That's a
It
good
just
one.
kind of depends, I guess.
Yeah, the slab
Well, I
is
mean-
kind of like, it all depends. Like, if it's dangerous, it's definitely like we're not rushing out there. We're like trying to get, like, look at it from every angle, go up high, go low, like figure it out,
I mean, part of it, like that last wave, the really dangerous one, it's like, it wasn't even a question, like those guys wanted to surf it, even though it was so dangerous. So they were just trying to get there out there as fast as they could. So.
But at the same time, like, Alex went out there those 2 days.
Yeah,
he
and
did-
walked around like
Yeah.
on the reef when there wasn't any waves the day before and kind of looked at it.
Yeah, it's a hard thing, because I think what I almost equate like what we're doing closer to like mountaineering, where it's like these guys want to get like a first ascent, they want to climb that peak, and in a way it's like has a similar like relevance because it's like there's danger and there's all these things they equate to it, but I think that there's precautions you have to take, and you have to be smart and evaluate, and you have to pick the right board and the right fin setup, and it's not so much like it's super scientific, but at the same time there's a good amount of preparation that goes into it, so you don't just like when he took off on that first wave out there, like I was like shooting, but I was like holding my breath, like I didn't, because it was so, I mean, if something happened and Alex was the only one out there, everybody else we were all sitting inside waiting, because we didn't even think it was surfable. He could have like gone head first into some like urchin or something. So we were lucky that it didn't happen and the session ended how it did, but it could have been like the film could have ended with us like going to the hospital, just as easily. So yeah, luckily that didn't happen. Any other questions? Yeah, shoot.
How much did you guys get to surf? Sorry.
How much Ben got to surf. I did not get to surf. That's always the toughest one, I think, because we invest for me at least, for him it's super important because he writes all these stories. So like the article in Surfer he wrote, it's amazing. And that's actually why me and Ben joined up first, because he's a writer by trade, and then cinematography kind of came to you second, right? So like you got to get in the water, and it's important for you to do that.
Yeah, but at the same time you're thinking like, oh man, this is like a rare opportunity that the waves are so good, so it's like I need to capture this as well. So as much as you want to be out there and experiencing it, it's like you also have to capture it because that window is so short.
Yeah.
Right, like these guys are probably the first 3 to ever surf, certain waves, and then
For sure.
you guys miss out on it.
And I'm just like, I'm not even gonna worry about getting in the water. Like I just don't even tempt myself and don't bring that stuff. And usually if I am gonna get in the water, it's like I'd rather save my wetsuit to be warm for when I have to go swim, rather than be like cold and then like go and suffer when I go back out in the water. So you have to weigh it out. Some days you're like, oh, after they get in, I'll go out, and then it starts raining, and you're like, oh, I'm going straight to like my bed or something like that, or finding shelter. Cool. Cool. Thank you guys so
Yeah,
much. I
thank
really
you guys.
appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.